online. We are delighted to welcome Nirmali Fenn, composer, to present some of her music for us today. We met Nirmali just briefly last year, and we're hoping to maybe get to know her a little bit better through this summer, but we'll take what we can get in this online forum. Nirmali just joined the faculty of StonyBrook University. I believe, was it last year or 2 years ago?
No, everyone says it was 2 years ago, even the students that I've been teaching, as though this is like I've been there for too long. I only started in August of last year.
Okay, well, it's been a whirlwind year, I'm sure. But thank you for joining us. And yeah, why don't we all turn our video and sound off now that we're viewing Nirmali's screen, and we'll do a discussion at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Ian. So when I'm asked to actually talk about myself as a composer, I find myself talking about the ways in which I listen. My expression is a reflection of how I listen. I think and I know that I write the listening process into my music. So today, I want to first articulate the listening experience as I perceived it as a child, and then move on to some pieces in order to reflect on the messages I want to convey in my music. But I'm not presuming that the observations I make today will provide the only avenue to perceiving all my music. I hope it'll go towards connecting my life experiences, which I know, with my music, and thereby provide a platform to comprehend some of the musical activities in my compositions. So when I was 12, I went back to visit my country of birth, Sri Lanka. I hadn't been back for 7 years, not since my Australian parents adopted me from one of Sri Lanka's many orphanages. At the time of the visit, Sri Lanka's civil war was at its fiercest, but my parents wanted me to connect with a culture from which I'd been dislocated. So it was on the sonically frenetic streets of Sri Lanka's capital that I had one of my most memorable musical experiences, and it ties into what the title of this whole conversation is about. This experience shaped and reshapes my compositional voice, and that was of seeing a street performance of a snake charmer. In the performance, the player's instrument, which is called the bean, was barely audible over the din of the street noise, but that didn't dull the apparent listening focus of the animal. Here we were, as a transfixed crowd of tourists and locals on the periphery, witnessing an apparent act of listening. I say apparent because it's unclear whether snakes can actually hear that music, but they are focusing on the movement of the instrument and the bodily motions of the player. For us, the audience members of this event, we were mesmerized by the direct gaze of the snake on the performer, which we attributed to be an act of listening. Snake charmers believe that it is the vibrations of their music that hypnotize and then mobilize the snake, enabling the animal to dance in a way that embodies the shape of the melody. That performance, this performance in particular, provided an arena of stillness, a space of listening that was surrounded by the violently loud hubbub of the street. So I wanted to cite that recollection to you today of the snake charmer and his listening performers, because I listen to sound in a similarly focalized manner. It interests me because although it's focalized, it gives me an opportunity to magnify my expressive outlook. So quite often I take on a lot of social issues in my music. I was born in the midst of the Sri Lankan Civil War. I became an orphan because of the Sri Lankan Civil War. My goal in expressing music is to resolve conflict. And I want to show you an example of one of my pieces that aim to do just this. In 2015 to 2019, I was the director of music at Yale University in Singapore. In one of my courses, I took 18 students to Poland for an out-of-classroom learning experience. The project was titled Awakening in the Silence. The course was dealing with the concept of memorial silence, and the students went to Auschwitz-Birkenau and experienced silence deep underground in the Bochnia salt mine. I wanted students to consider that silence can be so resoundingly real that it can let us reflect on some things that we cannot put into words. Now, in order to contextualize the project for the students, I took them to an exhibition of drawings by Auschwitz survivor Marian Kawaje. This exhibition is called Labyrinth, and it's currently and will always be installed at the Center Maximiliana in Oswiecim. Oswiecim is the Polish name of the suburb that holds the Auschwitz concentration camp. And in fact, Poles don't call it Auschwitz anymore because that's a German word, German renaming of their city. It's called Oswiecim. So Kawaje, Marian Kawaje, was Auschwitz prisoner number 432. And the number appears in many of his images. The number embodies his identity as a prisoner. So shortly after seeing the exhibition, I wrote a vocal piece titled Pokoj for Pokoju. Pokoj for Pokoju translates from Polish into English as peace in a room. Now, that number, that was Kawaje's number, 432, actually became a tuning of two of my voices for the piece. Now, you'll see that soprano is at A432 hertz and bass 1 is at A432 hertz. Now, A at 432 hertz is often considered as the Verdi A because Verdi often requested that his operas be sung at that particular tuning. Now, when I put A432 hertz against A440 hertz, I get a microtonal tension between the group. And this is what I was looking for. Now, this number 432 from Kawaje's images also structurally determine my choice of intervals, since when the proportion of 4 to 3, when you divide the string in the proportion of 4 to 3, you get a perfect fourth, and 3 to 2 gives you the perfect fifth. So Kawaje's images help me to visualize the drama implied in the number 432, and I incorporated it in a piece that reacts to social conflicts, similar to his drawings that act as a call for peace. And so when I'm going to show you this piece, firstly, I'm going to turn my video off before I show it to you. But secondly, I'm not going to show you the score. The text of the piece is just the word for peace in many different languages, but it's framed by social conflicts. So for instance, when you hear the soprano first come in, the social conflict that she's framing is referring to the Sri Lankan Civil War. So you will get the word peace in Sinhala, which is Samaya. You will hear the word peace in Tamil, which is Amanthi, and you will hear the piece in Hindi, which is Shanti. And the point of this piece is that if those three sides, warring sides, had simply said peace, how much of an effect would that have been to a conflict I knew? Now, at the very beginning of the piece, it begins with the Syrian conflict. So all of those languages of those warring sides in the current Syrian civil war is something that's being mentioned at the very, very beginning. Towards the end, you will hear that of World War II. So you will hear the German word, which is Friede, for the word peace in German, with that of the Yiddish word, with that of the Polish word, with that of the Japanese word, with that of the English word, with that of the Italian word. And what you will hear climaxing when the soprano reaches the highest note possible in the piece is the word pax in Latin, which is now considered a dead language. So I'm going to go ahead and play the piece, and we can talk about it later. So I'll stop my video now. And I must let you know, before I go forward, the recording is not brilliant, unfortunately. So it's the only recording I have of the piece, unfortunately. So I had a dilemma when it came to setting the German word for peace in this piece. And that's the word freedom. So this piece was commissioned by a vocal ensemble in Austria who were performing in the Kirche am Steinhof in Vienna. This building was the main site of the Nazi program of euthanasia and the enforced sterilization of the mentally ill. Frida must have been thought and said so many times in this building. It resonated with it, defined one of its core memories. If I was going to say Frida, I needed to coax it into existence and also hide it in order to let the building speak it. So speaking of buildings, and I'm going to now segue onto my next piece. I was first in New York in 2013 when I was working at NYU. And the many tall buildings here did not shock me, as I had lived in Hong Kong for 4 years prior to moving to New York. New York is often parallel with Hong Kong in terms of the nature of the urban environment, but I don't hear them as the same. On the ground, Manhattan has a distinctive blend of siren and car horn sounds that appear to bend because of the many street corners. There is this something about corners in New York because Hong Kong doesn't have that sonic profile. So people move at a frenetic pace in both cities, each moving in their separate orbit in tune with their individual agendas. But because of Central Park, New York City is a city of walkers. At the time of writing the next piece I'm going to show you, I was interested in the feats of Philippe Petit, who is a French tightrope walker who walked between the twin towers of the World Trade Center. This is just a small video to introduce him.
Actually, this was my answer to my first interview after walking the Twin Towers.
And up here at 1,500 feet or in that area, there is somebody out there in a tightrope walk between the two towers of the World Trade Center, right at the tippy top.
I was handcuffed and I was going to jail and in front of the judge, but then the press sneaked in and they said, "So why did you do that?"
Why did you do this?
And I was shocked by that question. Why? I never thought why I did it, because I am a war walker and I fell in love with two towers.
There is no why. It's just because when I see a beautiful place to put my why, I cannot resist.
I wanted to do something inspiring and poetic and memorable. So why? So my English was very bad at the time, so I came up with this one-liner. Why? Well, because when I see three oranges, I joggle, and when I see two towers, I walk. First, everything that I did during those 8 improvised crossings was just improvised. I didn't plan. I mean, I planned to walk across, and then I will see what happened. So in one of those crossings, I got the urge to look down, because I thought, I mean, I have to, you know, in my head to photograph the scene. It's unique, it will never happen again, and actually the towers are gone, so it cannot happen again. So I sit down on the wire, and then I looked down around, and then I looked all the way down to the plaza, and I loved it. And it was amazing because people were little ants, little dots, like I must have been for them, you know. And I will never forget that picture that I took in my head of that scene. It was beautiful and frightening and unique. The highway should be a stage. Now, of course, it's a very narrow stage and a dangerous one, which is good. You have to take your life very seriously. I don't want to risk my life. I never did. I never will. So I prepare for a highway walk, and I plan my entire life, you know, rehearsing. But that's what I would say to somebody who would like to learn. They said, you know, follow your intuition. There are no really schools of wire walking. It's the most difficult art in the world, and it's the most easy art in the world. It's the art of walking, except they don't teach that in university, how to walk, right? People do that naturally. it has to be a very mysterious and very personal chemistry that you develop by intuition and by passion and by rehearsing and practicing all the time. I have a way of not so much forgetting the world around me, but filtering the world around me to just be on the why in the best ways.
It started out as another routine morning for a New York helicopter traffic reporter.
So it was during my time in New York, at this time at least, I was very interested in casting my gaze to the edges of the tops of buildings and imagining aerial footpaths. And it's this aspect of New York I write about in my piece, A High Wire Act. So what happens in this piece is that violin, piano, cello, they're all string instruments, and all of them walk on each other effectively, as though walking on a high wire act on each other's strings. And this is what's going on behind this piece. So again, I'll turn my video off to listen. I'm actually going to stop it here for the interest of time and because we need to have a conversation after. But a lot happens in terms of how things move and how strings bend, etc. in this piece. So again, now that I'm in New York for the second time, I have a very different experience of it. COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter movement, two of the largest upheavals for mankind in this century, are happening now. These two competing currents are occurring simultaneously. COVID-19 represents a complete waste of human life, while Black Lives Matter conveys that life is equal and matters. A common theme that holds both is the idea of I can't breathe. And I got to express my reactions of this in a project with the New York-based Unheard Of Ensemble. So I'm talking about a piece that's hot off the press right now. So the piece is called Extinct Angels. And for this piece, the audience will only see this image draped before them on the curtain. And behind this curtain is a clarinetist. And he will be breathing music into every one of these figures with the bell of the clarinet being placed on the curtain, being placed on the curtain before him. And it will then make that curtain shimmer. So when I was also composing this piece, many of my friends have sent me videos of their interactions with nature. And this here is a video my friend from Germany took of a holiday from Morocco. Now, I wanted to replicate that sound on the strings. So after a lot of experimentation, I came up with the idea of putting aluminium foil on the strings. In some respects, this is the sound of freedom for me, because it's what my friend had while we were in social isolation in America. Extinct Angels is now finished, and I'm still writing, after 2 years, a project titled Resistance. And it was a piece that was supposed to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, and is a project with the Sascha Waltz dance ensemble in Berlin. This piece is one of my most meaningful projects because I realize that if walls come crumbling down, then equality can happen. This is a hope for the future, and it's a message I want to carry forward with my music.